to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's June 16th, 2021 revised order extending remote participation by all members in any meeting of a public body. This meeting of the Great Barrington Select Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and our parties with a right and a requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. Pursuant to Mass General Law 7C 30A, Section 20F, after notifying the chair of the public body, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of a meeting of a public body who may transmit the meeting through any medium. At the beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of any such recording. So this meeting is being recorded by the town of Great Barrington, by CTSB, Berkshire Edge, Berkshire Eagle, and other members of the public. Any member of the public wishing to speak at the meeting must receive permission of the chair. The listing of agenda items are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. So let's start out with the approval of minutes. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of January 18th, January 31st, February 1st, and February 2nd.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all votes are roll call in virtual meetings. Garfield?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Ed?
Yes.
Lee?
Aye.
And aye, it's unanimous. Select board's announcements, statements. Garfield?
Yes, thank you, Stephen. I have a couple things, actually. I had some people stop me and ask me a couple questions, so I thought I would tell you what they are and get some information out to these folks. One person asked me about the consolidation of the school. I had been in contact after with Deb Phillips. She told me that there's still talks in progress on that. And I understand that, Stephen, you may have a little more information on that.
Yeah, if people are interested in it, the next meeting of the Regional School District Planning Board is March 22nd at 6 p.m. virtually. So, and there'll be a press release. This is a fairly important meeting where the consultants will give their, we think it's three options for the school districts to take. There'll be no vote that evening, but there'll be three options, and the consultants will weigh in on what their feelings are on those options. The Regional School District Planning Board and numerous subcommittees have been meeting for almost 2 years, so it's very active, and you'll start to see more in the press about it now that we're at this point.
There is a website I was told that you could look, people can look if they want. It's
yes.
RS, like R as in Richard, S like Sam, D as in David, P like Peter, B.org. So rsdpb.org. That
is all the information you could imagine on it. It would take you a long time to read everything. They're all really good reports on it. And I think people who are interested should go to that website.
Okay. And now I understand that there is some talk about, we're still talking about renovating or rebuilding and or getting a new school for the high school. Is that still on the docket?
Still on the table.
Still on the table. Okay. And one other thing, someone asked me about the bridge again. I believe we are going to have the Division Street Bridge in this summer. Is that correct?
Mark can probably answer that, but that is our plan to have it for this summer. Absolutely.
I have an update on that that I'll share in just a minute.
Okay.
Thank you. That was it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric?
Nothing. Thank you.
Ed?
Nothing.
Lee?
Yes, just real quick. I know that we are talking about the short-term rental proposal later on tonight following the rest of the agenda items, but I just wanted to clear up two things that were going around in social media, and I just wanted to make sure that people understood this. Number one, this short-term rental proposal does not impact seasonal or month-to-month rental. So I think there's might be a little confusion about that. So anything over 30 days does not fall into this category and would not be impacted by any short-term rental proposal. So again, any short-term rental proposal would not impact seasonal or month-to-month rentals. The other thing I wanted to point out is that the intention of this bylaw was never to create affordable housing, nor be the one-stop solution to the town's housing crisis. So again, on social media, there's a bit of a whirlwind and some information out there. So I do encourage anyone that has questions to write to the select board directly, and we'll bring them up, or stay later at the meeting, such as tonight, and speak at Citizens Speak, because sometimes some misinformation could get out there. The last item I'd like to just clear up is that there is no cyber spying involved in any kind of short-term rental bylaw proposal, specifically not this one. If this does go forward, Granicus, who is the platform that we have talked to, is a widely regarded short-term rental monitoring and compliance platform, and they're trusted by 350 plus short-term rental customers around the world. So there is no cyber spying involved, and I just wanted to clear up those small items because they seem to be circulating around. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a couple things. One is that I understand their town's only laundromat is closed, and I would urge any entrepreneur who's out there to look at finding a space and opening a laundromat, because town the size of Great Barrington, with a number of seasonal visitors, we could really use a laundromat, and I think that's a shame. I want to congratulate Heather Barberry, Head of Emergency Management at Fairview Hospital. She's been named the Rotary Club Citizen of the Year, and that's a huge honor, and it's well deserved. She has done a lot for this town and surrounding towns, so just want to congratulate her. Moving ahead, town manager's report.
Thanks, Steve. Just a few quick items tonight. First off, Housatonic Waterworks. As of this afternoon, we are still waiting on a copy of the notice of noncompliance from DEP. So as always, we'll continue to post updates in between meetings, and as soon as we have that information, we'll post that on our website under the Housatonic Waterworks tab. Housatonic School Marketing Update. I just wanted to mention to the board and to any attendees tonight that we've done a number of things, various things to promote the Housatonic School. And I just wanted to quickly go through a list here. We developed a marketing video, and credit goes to Chris and his partners, Berkshire Regional Planning, for developing that. That video is posted on YouTube and has been, and our website. It's been viewed 323 times. The video and links to contact information were promoted through targeted social media advertising in the Boston and New York metro areas. We issued a press release, and that was picked up by local media outlets. We posted the RFP on our website. We listed it on LoopNet, which for those of you that are not familiar with LoopNet, is a commercial property website for development opportunities. We reached out to all of the parties that expressed an interest in recent months and years, and we're in the process now of creating some development opportunity signs that we'll go ahead and post at the Housatonic School site. We'll mount them to the property and instruct anyone interested in that opportunity to visit our website. And then we shared the video and the request for proposals with One Berkshire, with this other Berkshire Chamber of Commerce, and BRPC, so all of our regional partners. And this is in addition to the required advertisements, such as the local newspaper and Central Register. Moving on down my list here, fiscal 23 budget public hearings. I just wanted to let everyone know, or remind everyone, that we'll be concluding our fiscal 23 budget season tomorrow night, March 1st at 6 o'clock. We'll be having a public hearing on the proposed budget and a brief presentation by the administration from Berkshire Hills on the fiscal 23 assessment for Great Barrington as well. And then I have two add-ons for this evening, going back to a question from Garfield earlier. The bid opening for the Division Street Bridge was last Thursday. It was delayed by 1 week, but it did happen last Thursday at 2:00. The bids are still being reviewed at this time, but it appears that Reifenberg was the low bidder at $1,763,115. And then one other update I'd like to share tonight is that the rubber membrane that we've discussed on several occasions for the former Housatonic School was installed last week to prevent any further water damage to that structure. So you may have seen some action there, and that's what that was. Our building inspector was up there to inspect it and sign off late last week. So it's great to have that completed, and that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Thanks.
Licenses and permits, just have one tonight. It's Paul Jaffe of Great Barrington Coffee, LLC, DBA Flying Church Coffee at 200 Main Street for an annual common victualler license. So we're gonna, Kate McCormick is here, and so is Paul.
Hi, Steve. How are you?
Good, how are you, Kate?
I'm great. I'm here tonight. Paul John also on the line. And we're here tonight to ask for a common vic license for the Flying Church Coffee. So the name of the business is Great Barrington Coffee, LLC. It's the kiosk building at the Flying Church. And we're looking for a common vic license for 7 days a week, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. For a coffee beverage shop.
Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve an annual common victualler license to Paul Jaffe of Great Barrington Coffee, LLC, doing business as Flying Church Coffee at 200 Main Street.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, just a quick comment.
Yeah.
Just very excited to be able to get a cup of coffee in town after 4:00 would be amazing. So just wanted to state that. That's all. Thank you.
Good point.
Yeah.
Thanks, Eric.
Roll call vote. Garfield?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
And aye, it's unanimous. Good luck, Paul.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna go a little out of order here. New business seems to be, for the most part, routine, and the short-term rental may take a little longer, so we'll do new business first. First one is a placement of library trustees vacancy on the May 10th, 2022 ballot. So let's see. I don't see Jen here, but I don't think we really need it. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the appointment of 2 members to the Affordable Housing Trust.
No. I'm on the library trustees vacancy.
Oh, sorry. I got ahead of myself. Yes, I see that. I make a motion to approve the placement of, how should I say this? Of a library trustees vacancy on May 10th, 2022 ballot.
Do I have a second? We have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. Garfield?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
And aye. Next is appointment of 2 members to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to appoint the 2 members to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, Krisha Kurja and Ananda Timpane.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call. Garfield?
A resounding yes.
Eric?
Aye.
Ed?
Yes.
Lee?
I second Garfield's motion resoundingly.
And
Yes.
I'm yes, so it's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank
for
you to
volunteering.
both of you if you're out there.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for volunteering. Next is the application for the FY22 District Local Technical Assistant Funds from Berkshire Regional Planning. Review applications and authorize the chair to sign the applications as chief elected official. Is this going to Chris or Mark?
Chris is going to handle this one.
Okay.
He may be having a technical issue. We're not able to promote him here.
Okay.
I'll just open his mic for now. He's signing out and back in. Sorry for the delay.
That's okay.
Sorry, I'm on call. Did we get Chris?
He's signed out and he's signing back in.
Okay, good.
These are both pretty straightforward
Yes.
applications for district local technical assistance programs through BRPC for the upcoming year. Don't see him coming back in yet. There he is.
There it is.
Hi, everybody. Sorry about
Hey,
that.
Chris.
You can hear me okay now?
We can.
Okay, great. There's two applications I'd like the board to consider tonight for the annual District Local Technical Assistance Program. One is seeking assistance to update the Open Space and Recreation Plan, which is a top priority of this board, as you know. And the other is for assistance researching and developing various housing options, incentives, regulations, and other things that are, we've done a lot in zoning, but there may be other things that we can do that in zoning or not in zoning. And we're seeking some expertise in those programs and how to implement them locally if indeed they are options. Happy to answer any other questions.
Do we have any questions? Then do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the application for FY22 District Local Technical Assistance Funds from Berkshire Regional Planning.
Second. And can we have the same motion to authorize the chair to sign the applications?
And I make a motion to authorize the chair to sign the application as chief elected official.
So that's one motion by Lee, second by Ed. Any questions or discussion? Roll call vote. Garfield?
Aye.
Eric? You're muted, Eric.
Aye.
Thank you. Ed?
Yes.
And Lee?
Aye.
And unanimous?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Next is a referral of an additional proposed zoning amendment to the planning board for public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the referral of an additional proposed zoning amendments to the planning board for a public hearing.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Can you explain that to me a little bit further, please?
Chris, you want to explain that?
Oh, sure. The planning board would like to recommend and have a public hearing on another zoning amendment that deals with two-family regulations. regulations governing two-family use of a lot.
Thank you.
As is required under the general laws, it needs to be referred, any zoning amendments need to be referred back to the planning board to hold a public hearing.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Roll call. Garfield.
Aye.
Eric.
Aye.
Ed.
Yes.
Lee.
Aye.
And yes, it's unanimous. Last on the new business is the affordable housing suggestions for review by select board. Ed?
Thanks. After listening to a couple of planning board meetings where Pedro Pachano, who's the chair of our joint subcommittee on housing, was sort of frustrated he couldn't move anything along, and I guess my frustration that we're spending all this time on short-term rentals, which we are now admitting is not having to do with affordable housing. I thought we should start pushing something forward. So with Chris and Pedro came up with a quick list of things, a few things we're already doing, but of things that the town could possibly do. And I just wanted to, my suggestion is we refer this list to the town staff, ask them to bring it back to us. At some point, bring in the finance committee, the Affordable Housing Trust, and that we act on some of these as quickly as we can. I think we do have a plan for the short-term rental community impact fee of 3%. I don't think that'll take a lot of discussion, but some of these are relatively simple, and I would like to move on them as quickly as we could.
Do I have a second?
I have a second. Yeah, I had a question. Oh, actually, Garfield, sorry.
Go ahead, Garfield.
Yes, what are the actual things you're speaking about, Ed? Because you haven't.
But they were in the packet, Garfield.
All right, maybe I missed it then.
Yeah. Most of these are things that we've talked about. This puts a really nice comprehensive list together. That I don't know if there's anything on here we haven't talked about, but this puts a list together and it puts a focus on affordable housing, which I appreciate. Lee?
Yeah, so as far as I know, the housing subcommittee is still together. We haven't disbanded, and I think that we have tried to make progress. So I would like to say that there is still a housing subcommittee that Garfield and I are on, along with Jonathan and Pedro of the planning board, and we have been working together on all types of housing, not just affordable housing. But I do appreciate this list, Ed, and I'm in support of any kind of housing initiative. So thank you.
So roll call vote to send this to the administration.
I don't know if it matters. I think the agenda said there's no vote. So I don't know if just a nod.
Discussion only, you're right, it did.
Discussion only.
That's fine. That's fine. You're correct. They did say that, so we will leave it. We'll withdraw the motion and withdraw the second. And I didn't see that, Ed. You're correct.
So, but I guess if there's no objection, staff could take this up and.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
And if we had extra things, like I have a few more initiatives as well, should we just send them straight to Chris and Mark, or do we have to go through the select board?
No, I think it can go to Chris and Mark. That's part of our goals.
Yeah. I mean, I know that all this has been discussed before, so it's nothing new. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so now moving ahead to the short-term rental discussion. And for people who haven't joined us, we're still hashing out a bylaw that will go to town meeting. And we will have, once we're done with the bylaw, we will have public discussion at a select board meeting on this. So that won't be now, although you can speak at Citizen Speak. But we're hashing this out right now. So if people want to leave their hands up, they can. They'll be recognized at Citizen Speak, but there will be time to speak on this at a select board meeting in the future, well before town meeting. So, Chris, do you want to guide us through this? Mark, do you want to do the sharing the screen?
Sure. I'm assuming you'd like me to share. Actually, let me move Eric to the participant pool first, since he's recusing himself.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm assuming you'd like me to start with the packet version.
The version that was put in the packet, the newest version that was put in the packet with Lee's name on it. And Chris, if we can start with registration, which is at the end, because we haven't talked about that, and then we'll go from the beginning, and hopefully we can get through this tonight. And if not, we'll get through it at the next meeting.
So this is the February 24th version. Can everyone see that?
Yes, thank you.
Could you zoom it into one page, Mark?
Sure. Sorry, you can go ahead and get started working on this.
Okay. Well, okay, thanks, Steve. Over the last few meetings, the board has been discussing a draft of the short-term rental bylaw, making changes as you go, asking questions as you go, voting on certain items as you go, making sort of incremental decisions, but we haven't gotten all the way through yet. So the color-coded version that I sent to you for your packet tried to track all of that discussion, if you will. The one place that we hadn't gotten yet was the registration section. So we can start there, Steve, as you suggest. This draft in front of you now that Lee put together into the packet, I think is a really good short version of everything we've been talking about and distills the major points into these 2 pages. You know, it's about who can have a short-term rental, what type of unit can it be in, for how long, and what's the registration. I mean, that's, to boil it down crudely, that's what this is about, and that's what these 2 pages do. So Mark, do you want to go down to the second page there, where registration starts? What this bylaw does, and what I was suggesting in the color-coded version, is it requires a registration through the select board office. And just to be clear, I don't think registration would be a vote of the board. I think it's simply filling in an application with the town staff in the select board town manager office, and providing all of the information that the select board agrees should be provided. Name, address, you know, attesting to certain parts of the requirement, et cetera, et cetera. Assuming that's all provided, you get a license or a copy of the registration that certifies that you are registered. And this would be an annual process to expire on the 31st of each year. So that's the essence of the registration. We need to know who you are and where you are and what type of unit this is. So, does that boil it down enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Chris, I had a clarification, if I could possibly suggest it in this paragraph. In the first sentence, when it says, by obtaining a short-term rental license, a resident owner can offer 2 separate entire dwelling units. I'm asking for that clarification because there might be some confusion whether we're talking rooms versus entire dwelling units. So my suggestion is, when it says a resident owner can offer 2 separate, to add the words separate entire dwelling units after 2. So a resident owner can offer 2 separate entire dwelling units for clarification purposes.
Okay,
that makes sense to me. And I think, you know, whichever way the board goes on this, I would probably take this out and put it into the regulation section, maybe. Or the regulation in terms of who can do what where. That makes sense. But with any of this, wherever you land tonight or the next meeting, staff can reorder.
Yeah.
Yeah, come up with a final version of it. Discussion on registration.
Well, I guess a question outside of registration, but within the sentence is, we're back to differentiating between primary residents and second homeowners?
Yes.
Okay, that was sneaky, right?
Well-
My problem with substituting in the middle of going through something line by line is it doesn't highlight the changes. So I guess I would object to, once again, dividing us among second homeowners who are part of our community and support our community, and people who live here, or I shouldn't even say second homeowners, people who live here 183 days versus people who live here 180 days. It was stated a couple of times. You said you don't want to divide our community. This divides our community. It's also doesn't serve a purpose. It's not one of the purposes of this to punish second homeowners.
Yes, I'd like to speak to under purpose and intent, Ed, number 3. It's listed as deter commercial interest from buying housing to use primarily as short-term rental businesses.
Yeah.
This limits the number of dwelling units someone outside the community or someone that does not have a primary residence can operate in Great Barrington. So this speaks to directly the purpose and intent listed in number 3, which says deter commercial interests from buying housing to use primarily as short-term rental businesses. This addresses this number 3 point.
But to Ed's point, we did say that we weren't going to change part-time resident. We weren't going to differentiate between full-time and part-time residents.
We did not say that. No disrespect.
Okay, I understood we had said it.
When we were talking about limiting the number of days, at that point, we were talking about primary residents versus non-primary residents, which has been changed. So to that point, yes, that has been changed, that the 90-day limit is across the board and does not differentiate between a part-time resident and a full-time resident. So to that extent, yes, everything is equal. But in terms of speaking to the purpose intent, which is listed as number 3, this is why this is here. And I feel strongly that we need to limit people coming in solely as investors to purchase properties for short-term rental. So this is what this speaks to. This limits someone that is a full-time resident to have 2 properties that they operate as short-term rentals, and someone that is a part-time resident or a non-resident to only have 1. And I think that this directly speaks to the need of housing in Great Barrington and the shortages that we are currently seeing.
Mark, can you go back to the requirement, to the registration?
Once again, we've added a definition we didn't have before, differentiating between second homeowners and primary residents. This also stops retirees, limits their income. Commercial interests is commercial interests. It's not necessarily somebody who spends more of their time in Florida than here. That doesn't make it a commercial interest. Any more than, as an individual, if I own a home that I'm living in and I own another home, renting them both out, short-term rental is no more or less commercial interest than if I live in Florida most of the year and have to. We're treating the 2 groups differently.
And I'll draw your attention to what it says. By obtaining a short-term rental license, a resident owner can offer 2 separate entire dwelling units for a short-term rental use, providing one of the dwelling units is their primary residence. A non-resident or part-year resident can offer 1 dwelling unit for short-term rental. So we're not banning people that don't have full-time residents to operate a short-term rental license. So we're not stopping any retirees. We're not stopping investors. We're just limiting the number of short-term rentals they can buy. So for you to say that we're preventing retirees from operating short-term rental, we are not doing that.
One at a time, please.
We are treating them differently. Just because they don't live here 183 days, we're treating them differently, which this board have decided not to do. And that divides the community, which you have stated you don't want to do.
Well, Ed, I absolutely disagree with you. I think that having them be able to operate a short-term rental in a home, in a town that is not their primary town that they live in is very generous and does not separate them out from people that live here full-time. There is a housing shortage, and I think that limiting the number of properties someone can rent and use as a commercial enterprise is fair to the long-term residents of this community.
Yeah, I'm a little uncomfortable, Lee, and I know we haven't talked about this because quite honestly, stopping commercial owners of short-term rental from expanding, I agree with. I have a problem, though, with having people who may have lived there their whole life are now no longer full-time residents, but treating them different than someone who still lives here their whole life.
Can I speak to that?
Of course.
We're allowing them to operate a short-term rental. So I don't understand the problem. What we're saying is that they can't purchase more than one. So
Right, I just don't want to treat them differently
we're
at all.
not stopping the second home that they are living in. We're just saying that they can't buy an additional property and use it as a commercial enterprise. That's all we're saying. We're not touching their second home.
No, I
We're
understand.
treating the second home identical as a full-time resident. We're limiting it to 90 days. So across the board, that is now the same. Before that, we had a primary residence requirement. That is gone. All this is saying is that if you have a second home, you can use it and short-term rental. But in terms of buying additional properties and operating commercial businesses and residential neighborhoods that long-term residents and full-time residents are trying to get a leg up on in terms of buying properties and investing in the community, that we're just limiting it to one. So I think that this is entirely fair. We have to realize that there's full-time residents here in search of houses. So we really need to be mindful that there are people that actually want to live here and invest in this community and send their kids to school and volunteer that cannot find housing. And I think limiting one property as a commercial enterprise from someone that is not full-time here is fair.
I have to agree with Lee on that. I do think it's fair. I don't think it's limiting at all.
Okay, so we're not going to get anywhere tonight.
Well, can I ask for a vote then? Because I
go
think
ahead,
this
because
is a really important
Can I
point.
just-
And, this was included in the packet. And I think that we should go and move on because there's an awful lot that the select board needs to grapple
No,
with.
I think there's a better way of stopping commercial investors than choosing to stop the non-resident, and I don't even like the term non-resident because they may have lived here 50 years and they've chosen, you're right, they have chosen to get a residence somewhere else, but I feel.
Would you suggest without limiting the number of short-term rentals that someone has, we're basically the whole bylaw is weak because then people that have the wherewithal can buy many properties as short-term rentals. So I think limiting the number of commercial enterprises in residential neighborhoods is fair. We're letting second homeowners continue to do what they want, and we're allowing full-time residents to have two properties that they can run as short-term rentals. So I really don't understand what the argument is, that we're not touching someone's second home. We're just saying that you can't use us as a commercial enterprise.
May I try to explain the argument?
I wonder if their primary residents, if they would want to, buy commercial businesses and operate them in their hometown. So again, we're allowing them to make money off their second home. We are not stopping that. We're just asking them not to buy more than one home specifically to run a commercial enterprise in a residential area.
No, and I understand that, and I agree with everything except treating residents and non-residents differently, because non-residents may be our neighbors for the last 40 years.
But we're not stopping their second home. We're not doing anything to that home. We're just saying you can't buy more than one property because we have a housing shortage. And once we open the gates,
let's go to the purposes, Mark. See, I don't see any of that on the purposes. Number three is deterring commercial interest.
Yes.
That's not a commercial interest.
Yes, it is. A home that is not your second home or your first home is a commercial interest. They're not living in it. They have they will not be living in a third home. That's a commercial interest.
Okay.
They're buying it solely to make money. It's not a second home.
Ed, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to try and explain. What Steve and I are saying is, as it's written, it treats second homeowners differently. What you're saying is the reason you're treating them differently. So our objection is that they're being treated differently. I understand you're trying to limit one group of people from doing something that the other group isn't limited from in order to create more housing, which is not on our purposes here. The objection is that we're treating the two groups differently. So that's the objection. We don't need to hear again that why you're doing this. The objection is that it treats the two groups differently.
Okay, so then should we just have one, everyone has one home then? And don't let primary residents have two?
I wouldn't limit it like that.
You do that or let everyone have two, because I mean, first of all, I don't consider them commercial interests, but I understand your point. It's well taken. I mean, however we do it, I would like to do it so that we're not differentiating between non-residents and residents.
Okay, can I make a point then?
Yes, of course.
So a primary resident lives here, and then they're allowed to have own one more property and operate a short-term rental out there. So that's two. Someone that is a part-time resident or a non-resident, they also have a primary residence, but it's elsewhere. So that's one home. And then they have a second property that they're running as a commercial residence. So that's two. So all we're saying is that their second home is elsewhere, and their first home is elsewhere, and their second home is here. So in reality, it's the same.
No, because I don't care about elsewhere. I'm worried
But what I'm saying is they have their primary home in another town, and what we're trying to grapple with in this town is a shortage of housing for people that live here full time, that work here full time. And one way to grapple with that is to limit the amount of commercial activity in residential areas. So what you're doing is you're allowing someone that lives here full time to have their home and operate it as they wish, plus have an additional investment and use that as a short-term rental as they wish. So all we're doing is saying that someone lives here that is invested here can do both. And someone that's a non-resident, they're doing both as well, but they're doing it in their home, their primary home. So it's the same thing. We're just trying to create a level playing field for people that might live here full-time that can't afford two homes. You know, we're just trying to give one home to people.
I agree. I have to agree with that, and I think it depends on what you look like and how you feel. And I gotta tell you, it's a terrible thing, but this is all about dollars and cents. We're talking about pushing kindness, or you're trading off apples, and no one would care. But it's about the dollar bill, which shouldn't everything. And Stephen, you said yourself, everything should not be about the dollar bill. And I think that's what we're talking and we're trying to propose. Let's not get crazy.
My only objection, Garfield. Sorry, I thought you were done.
Go ahead.
No, my only objection is I thought we had decided to not. I guess my definition of a non-resident, maybe because I've lived here my whole life, is different, maybe than someone else's, and that's my fault. I apologize for that. But my definition could be someone I've known since I've grown up. They live here, and someone who has a primary residence here and then has a second home could also have 6 other homes in 6 different locations, and we're not worried about that. So
well, they're probably regulated in those communities.
Right, and I don't care about that. I just care about the people who could have been here, had kids here, and decided for a variety of reasons to have their primary residence somewhere else later in life. Why treat them different?
Well, so I'll answer that by saying that a lot of people that live here full time do not make the salaries that people that live elsewhere do, and we're competing against that. And people are struggling just to have one home here. And when you throw in someone that has the ability that is based in another town to be able to operate 2 commercial enterprises, one as a second home, and then buy another one just for money, then you're directly competing with a full-time resident, someone that is trying to make ends meet, that's happy just to have a home, that's trying to send their children to school, that's, looking to age in place, that volunteers in the community. So what I'm saying is residents are struggling and we have a housing shortage, and we're trying to open up some of the housing that's being used by investors and used by people solely buying properties for short-term rentals. So the second homeowners will continue to be able to short-term rental. They'll make plenty of money to afford to pay their mortgage and to go on holidays. But right now we're talking about the residents that are committed and invested in this community. So all we're doing is saying, listen, we're glad you're here as a second homeowner, use your property, make money off it, but please do not buy an additional investment property, because we have a housing shortage and we really want to make it possible for people looking for homes to actually live here full time.
Okay.
Can you explain to me, Stephen, what your definition of a non-resident is? Because I think if you've lived here for 50 years and you decided you wanted to move, that is a choice that you've made. That would make you a non-resident, because just like you or I moved away from here, came back 10 years later, and we're a non-resident. And when we move, we're a resident of another town at that point. We're not a resident of Great Barrington anymore.
Yeah, I thought one of the things we had decided, Garfield, maybe I'm wrong, is that we weren't going to treat primary non-residents different. There's two types of non-residents, of course. You could be a non-resident and have no residence here. You don't live here at all. You just have commercial property. And then a non-resident could be someone who's not a voter here because their primary residence is somewhere else. So I think I think it's all in the definition of it. Lee?
Yeah. So actually, I lost my train of thought. I just, when we made that distinction, or when we talked about not separating or differentiating between primary and non-primary, that was when originally we had the primary residence requirement. So there was a division in one of the earlier drafts that only primary residents were able to operate short-term rentals. So when we had that discussion in the very, very beginning, that's when we said, yes, we didn't want to differentiate between a part-time and a full-timer. And so that was pulled out of the early bylaw. So now across the board, residents full-time are treated the same as part-time residents. Everyone has the same 90-day limit. So that's fair. That is that everyone's on the same plane. The only difference is actually pulling a piece of property out from the housing stock, from the very, very limited housing stock, and using it as a commercial enterprise, and taking that chance, that option away from a full-time resident to actually make a home. Because there's a lot of people looking for rentals right now. There's a lot of workforce looking to live in Great Barrington so they can actually contribute to our economy. We have businesses almost shutting down because they can't find staff. So all we're saying to second homeowners is, please respect us. We're so happy to have you. We're so happy that you're part of this community, but just please respect that. The fact is, we need to limit the amount of commercial property you have, because we need to give something to our residents. So all we're doing is that, Steve, we're not touching their second home. We're allowing them to make as much money as a full-time resident.
Then why do we allow full-time residents to?
Because a lot of people can't make as much money as people that can afford two homes. And a lot of people are struggling here. A lot of people need short-term rentals just to make ends meet.
You're talking about primary residents who own two homes. So what I'm saying is, why do we allow primary resident to own two homes when we have this? First of all, I dispute whether any of these homes will end up being year-round rentals, but assume they are. Why do we allow a primary resident to own two homes and rent one out totally as an Airbnb? We don't let a secondary, a part-time resident who could be, and Michelle Lebert will bring this up during Citizen Speak, someone who's lived here her whole life for generations. Because she wants to retire in her husband's hometown, she has a limit that she wouldn't have if she spent 183 days here. That's the part that doesn't
It's the same thing, Ed. One is they can have two as long as one is their primary residence.
I understand
so
that.
a second homeowner has a primary residence that they live in. So the only difference is that both have two homes.
Okay, so before, I'm going to end discussion on this because we're talking in circles now. We both, I respectfully disagree on this, and I think we should think about different wording. But I would prefer we just go back and see how far we can get in the beginning of this bylaw, and let's move our way through it.
Well, Steve, can you just tell me what you don't want any limit on short-term rentals? I don't understand where you're coming.
Why would you say that?
I'm trying to understand if you could tell me what
I really am uncomfortable with second homeowners being treated differently than primary homeowners. I'm uncomfortable.
So if we make this one and only allow primary residents to have one short-term rental, would you feel better?
If everyone was treated the same way, I'd feel fine.
There's a lot of situations where everyone isn't treated the same way, especially if you're talking about money, socialism, classes, and everything like that. So that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. Everyone is treated the same in this world, in this town. It's just not how it is, Steve.
No, and I agree with you, Garfield. And if I have a chance, one little chance to make it not so, then that's all I'm trying to do. I absolutely agree with you, and I wish everyone was treated equally everywhere, but I don't have control over that.
So just a clarifying question, Steve. So are you saying that a second homeowner that lives here, that you would be comfortable with them buying a second property just as a commercial enterprise, solely as an investment?
Well, let me twist that around a little bit. So a primary homeowner, they're allowed to buy a second one as a commercial interest. So why shouldn't a secondary? So why not just have neither of them be allowed to do that?
Because the resident here lives here. So they're entitled to use it as a short-term rental because they're actually going to be in the house. So that allows them to rent 2 rooms or ADU. That's where the distinction comes in.
No, and I understand that.
So it's actually even if you think about that. The only reason why a full-time resident can have 2 is because they're actually living in one. So it's not like they're going to disappear and just start renting 2. I mean, they're actually committed, and then they have a full-time primary residence that they live in. That's the only difference, Steve.
No, I understand that, and I'm respectful of what you're saying, and Garfield, I understand that. Just I'm having trouble wrapping my head around it. So instead of going around in circles, let's see if we can get through the beginning part of this, and then we'll come back to that probably in another meeting since I've been called into work. So I'm not going to stay for hours here.
Okay.
So. Chris, you want to guide us through the bullet points?
I think you can move on past the purpose and intents, right?
Yeah, I think we've all agreed on that, I think.
Yeah, I just had I had a procedural question. If I had just kind of wordsmithing and grammar, should I suggest that now? It's under purpose intent, just to put a semicolon after municipal interests and to begin the sentence, these regulations will, with a capital T.
If it doesn't change
it doesn't change anything.
So let's do that. Let's just send that to Chris.
The other change I do actually have that is different is to change number 1 from enable owners to enable residents. And I think that's in there. So I just wanted to flag that.
Well, it already says residents. You're right.
Yeah, I just wanted to flag that. Okay.
Okay,
And then just, again, it was just some wordsmithing. So I'll send the other grammar changes to Chris. But nothing else under the definitions.
Anyone else have anything under definitions? So let's go see if we can get
Hold
through
on,
these.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Resident owner? Are we leaving that as is?
Yep.
That's the crux of the problem we're just discussing. That's a change from the previous version, which I wouldn't vote for.
What did the previous version say?
It didn't say. It didn't have resident owner as a definition. It just had inspector, operator, owner.
Well, I think respectfully, for this version, you'll have to leave it in if you haven't come to a conclusion. You seem to be 2-2 against
Right.
on the previous discussions. You might as well leave it in for now and come back.
So let's go to general requirements for short-term rentals, because Chris is correct. That one will solve itself when we solve the registration.
The general requirements, I think these are relatively straightforward. Here's what you have to do to ensure this is a safe place for people to be boarding on a short.
Chris, I had a grammar, actually a clarification note on number 4 about the subleasing. If I could offer that, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
It doesn't change the intent of it. So I wanted to suggest, it says an owner shall expressly prohibit tenants from offering all or part of the dwelling unit for short-term rental use. So it's a clarifying change, saying an owner shall expressly prohibit tenants from offering. It was noted that might be confusing how it stands right now, so I wanted to offer that. And again, if town council thinks there's a better way of saying that, but just in my research, number 4, an owner shall expressly prohibit tenants from offering all or part of the dwelling unit for short-term rental unit use. So I guess it's a clarifying question, Chris, but someone had pointed out that might not be clear the way it's written right now on screen. So that's why I have that note.
Okay.
I have no problem with either one. That was clear.
So I can send it to you afterwards, Chris, or I can say it to you slow if you want to do it now.
You can send it later. That's fine.
Okay. And then number 7, again, I have a clarification on that. Yeah.
It's a little strange. Number 4 is a little strange because if you're requiring owners to register, you can just tell them that tenants can't do it. So why would they register that?
Yeah, it could be on the registration form. It was just laying it out here so it was clear, but it would just be something that I would ask.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think
Yeah,
Chris
if that's
right.
the policy and the board. Sorry.
So wherever it makes sense to put it, I'm fine.
Okay. Again, we can figure out where best to put it. The board
Okay.
previously voted on that prohibition, so we can figure
Yes.
out where
Okay.
it's best.
And then on number 7, again, I have a clarification on that. It doesn't change the purpose or intent. I could read it and you can just let me know if this is along the lines, or I could send it to you separately, Chris.
Go ahead.
I have short-term rentals are prohibited in dwelling units designed as affordable or otherwise income restricted, which are subject to affordability covenant,
Designated?
which are subject. Yeah. You want me to go back? Oh, designated. Yes. Short-term rentals.
Designated.
Yeah. Short-term rentals are prohibited in dwelling units designated as affordable or otherwise income restricted, which are subject to affordability covenants or are otherwise subject to housing or rental assistance under local, state, or federal programs or law. So it was just an addition at the end just to clarify that if there's any kind of rental assistance under local, state, or federal programs or law.
I have questions about that.
Go ahead.
So if whoever ends up living in 40 Grove Street, which I think is going to have some sort of a deed restriction on affordability, they can't supplement their, by definition, low income by doing short-term rentals?
It doesn't address deed restrictions, Ed. It just talks about someone if they're in, let's say, an affordable housing unit which is getting subsidies. So that's what this is speaking to. It's not talking about anything that has deed restrictions.
They would be a tenant then, right?
This would, Lee, in this case, based on what you just read, 40 Grove Street would be subject to an affordable housing covenant or restriction. So
Yep.
So it,
Well, I mean, that,
it would
okay.
not be available to the owner.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair because, I mean, once they start making, let's say they were to rent it out as a short-term rental, then they could be making up to, $40,000 a year. So I think that's fair. They're having that house based on what the income limit was at the time. So I think this is a fair term.
they can't get a better paying job then? The same thing could happen.
Well, no, I'm just talking about operating
understand that.
operating a commercial enterprise. That's what I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
So I can I have a request. Can we just run this by town council? Because I have no idea if this is legal or not. So
Okay. Just so you know, this was approved by the Attorney General. This was in the Stockbridge bylaw, and it was approved. So,
okay.
Just as a note.
Let's go to number 8.
I have a question earlier on number 1.
Sure.
We had talked about not saying noise ordinance because our noise ordinance is long, cumbersome, and requires a decibel meter to enforce. Weren't we going to say something like be respectful of neighbors or something more common sense? I can read you the ordinance again. It's just not useful.
Yeah, I think you're correct, Ed. I think it just says instructions, and I absolutely agree. I don't think we have to put the whole onerous leash or noise ordinance. So I think that's pretty open-ended. We just want people to be mindful of their neighbors.
Okay, so we'll just put that in there.
And their neighbors' lawns.
Yes.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Number 8 was events that include amplified music or tents, which we already had agreed to. Signs on the property we had agreed on, I believe. Chris, you want to move it ahead to short-term rentals of rooms in secondary units?
Go ahead. I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Provided the resident owner is occupying one of the dwelling units?
Yeah, I had a clarifying note on that. I could offer and see what you guys think.
Okay, go ahead.
I just didn't know for the second part of that sentence under short-term rental of rooms and secondary units, whether you think this is needed. At the end, it says, provided that the resident owner is occupying the dwelling unit at the time of the rental. It was just a clarifying note, and I'd be happy to send it and see what
I
town
don't
council.
know what this is trying to do, so I can't tell you if that makes sense.
They're occupying one of the units or the unit or?
That they're living in the house. They're living in their house as they're operating a short-term rental. So it's basically saying if it's your home, if it's your primary residence, by right, you can short-term rental an ADU or 2 rooms in your house when you're there. So
What if they live in the ADU and they want a short-term rental of the units in the house?
it says, or yeah, so either one. So if they're living in the ADU, they can rent out 2 rooms in their main home, or if they're living in their main home, they can rent out their ADU.
So
Says
up to 2 bedrooms. So last time we talked about number of people per bedroom and things like
Yep.
that.
Now that's all gone. Yep.
All gone? Okay.
Yep.
I think this probably deserves some discussion.
Yeah, I still
Yes.
don't understand what this is trying to do.
What's the question, Ed?
Up to 2 bedrooms in a dwelling unit or second unit in the same parcel may be rented year-round by right.
Mm-hmm.
You don't mean year-round. You mean they can do short-term rental as often as they want, correct?
Yeah,
You can
as long
rent
as they're there.
year-round.
Yep.
Um,
Well, the title is called short-term rental, so yes.
okay, can be rented, do a short-term rental beyond the 90-day limit, provided
Correct.
the owner is in residence
Correct.
property at the time of the.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, I don't get why, but
Well,
is that okay?
many
That's
people that
yours.
live here need the income and appreciate being able to live
Right,
in
so-
their home and have the ability to short-term rental while they're living.
It's great that we're allowing that. I'm wondering why we're not allowing that if they're not there. What's the difference?
Because there's accountability and they're living in their homes and they're
No, I get
invested
that they're living in their
in it.
homes. I don't understand why that makes a difference.
Because that they're there in their homes and they are able to rent out 2 rooms and use that to
Get that.
maintain their
You're
property.
missing the question is why does it matter if they're in the house or if they're not in the house, but the person next door is keeping an eye on the house? What's the difference? Why are we allowing one and not the other?
Because they're on the property and they're accountable for noise. They're not, there's
With a
no
why.
nuisance.
I know the what. I get that if they're on the property, they can do it. Why does it matter if somebody is on the property? Why are we allowing it versus the next door neighbor is watching the property?
Because they're in their own homes. It's their homes and
Okay,
they
thank
are renting out rooms and there's accountability and this is their property and they are entitled to make some income out of their own property.
I understand. I can read the thing. I guess I'm wondering why you lose the accountability if the person next door is doing the same function.
When you say next door, you mean a different person in a different home?
Yeah, different owner, different home, but right next door is taking responsibility for.
Because they are not on the property and we're trying to discourage people from operating commercial enterprises in empty homes. Whereas now we have the owner on the property during the short-term rental. They are using the revenue that they make to live in this house and to contribute to this economy.
Second homeowners contribute to the economy too. We've determined that. But
Yes, we do. And they are allowed to rent their own home out.
One at a time, please.
We should probably be discussing number 3 because I don't think we all agree on what that means. Deterring commercial interest from buying housing to primarily use a short-term rental. Because we keep putting up limits that stop some people from doing short-term rentals because we don't like short-term rentals, not because we're deterring commercial interests. So if I own 2 houses on my property and I have a very big property and one of those houses is very far away from the other, I can rent that out as much as I want because I'm in this house. But if I have 2 houses or 1 house and my next door neighbor lives 15 feet away, which is the case in my neighborhood, and my next door neighbor is responsible for the house while I'm gone, I can't rent it out despite the fact that the person who's there is even closer. So it sounds like what we're trying to do is punish people out of renting out short-term rentals because they don't live here year-round. And again, we're differentiating.
Ed, I would appreciate if you don't put words in my mouth. I've never said punish. I've never said second homeowners are evil. I've never said people that live here are evil. But I have heard you, and I have heard you comment on social media those, and I appreciate if you don't put words in my mouth.
Let's just stick to the context here, please.
And we already discussed the purpose intent, so I think we are going around in circles. I
don't think we agree on the. I don't think we agree on what number 3 means.
Yeah, I would agree with Ed on that. I don't think we agree on what the term commercial means. I think that's the problem. And it doesn't mean anybody's wrong. It just means I think we're interpreting commercial 2 different ways. To me, commercial is an LLC, a business, something else buying a property. It's not an individual.
Okay, you have a residential property and you have a commercial property. So a commercial property is designed to make a profit. A residential property is designed to home someone. It's a domicile. It can be seen as a human right. So that's the difference.
Well, no, I get that, but I guess you could have a residential, and if you're doing short-term rentals, you are making money off of it. Does that make you commercial then?
That's an addition to your home. That's an addition to a primary residence. So you're using that. It's your home, and you're taking some of the revenue off that to contribute to your being able to live in that home. Whereas the second way is buying a property solely for profit, and that's where the commercial activity comes in.
So I'm not going to get into this now because we already had this discussion 20 minutes ago. So, and I'm not saying that badly. I'm just saying everyone's heard it, how I feel, and they don't need to hear how I feel again.
So it's an investment property. So it's either a home or it's strictly an investment property. So that's the difference.
Yeah, no, I get it.
So I think if we need to say investment instead of commercial, we could.
Well, but then, Lee, and I guess I'm going to say it. If my primary residence is in Great Barrington and I own a second property, that's an investment property too.
Yes.
That's all. No disrespect, just all. That's just. So I think we have 2 parts of this that we have to figure out. One is registration. One is short-term rental of rooms and secondary units. I think everything else we've agreed on. Go ahead, Lee.
Yeah, so I wasn't able to finish in time for the packet, so I had two more sections that I'd like to offer that we put on this version. One is called adoption of regulations. It's very short. The second one is penalties. So if I could offer that, I did share it with Mark. I believe he might have that ready, but I'd like to offer that because I think it was needed for clarification and I was not able to get it in the packet in time. So it would come after registration, and the first heading is adoption of regulations and the second is penalties. So I could
I can share that version.
yeah, if you want to share it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we're going to move this a little quicker because there's 9 people with their hands up, and as I said, I do have to leave in a little while.
Can we do that at a a future meeting?
Well,
Well,
let's look at it so it's introduced.
Yeah, this is this is
Let's just
it
have it
takes,
introduced.
yeah, I don't think there's anything hopefully that people will object.
That
Yeah.
So the first one says the select board may adopt and amend regulations in furtherance of the implementation of this bylaw. What's that mean?
That if there's things that need to change after this, that they're able to.
I would assume with town meeting vote.
Yeah.
As long as it's with town meeting vote, I'm perfectly fine with that. And I think where we're going to get hung up on the next one, and there are a lot of hands up, so each day that a violation exists constitutes a separate offense or offense if you're from Canada. The problem with that, quite honestly, is that if Ed May or Chief Berger write a violation up on a Monday, that would mean they could come on Tuesday and write the second one when you might not have had a chance to get it taken care of. Some things would be simple, but other things may not be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we
this
need
would be a town council
Add
advice
days,
for that.
maybe.
Yeah.
What's that?
Add days to do it before we can issue a second.
Well, yeah, my concern, Garfield, I agree with you. My concern is, have you ever tried to hire someone to do something around here? It's difficult. They're busy, and it might not be days, it might be weeks. And if it's a safety offense, that's one thing. If it's not an imminent danger, it might be another thing. So let's look at this at the next meeting. But I don't disagree with it. I just concerned that you could be on your third offense on a Wednesday and you haven't even found anybody to hire.
I don't think we mean that. I don't think Lee means that.
No, I know she doesn't. And I'm not implying that.
No, I'm not saying you are either. Right. I agree with you, Stephen.
Yeah.
No, I agree. There should be some time in between. No question about it.
Yeah.
And it is.
Steve, there is, if you could just raise that, scroll that up, Mark, please.
Mhm.
Under, there's a section under inspection that I believe we might have not covered.
Inspections, okay.
Yeah. So if we could just go over the orange, that's new, and the green.
Short-term rental owners are required to provide access for the purpose of conducting safety inspection when necessary. Failure to provide access to an inspector upon request and after proper notification will invalidate the license to operate a short-term rental until an inspection by the appropriate authority has been conducted. All violations have been addressed to the satisfaction of the department and or the town. Failure to comply with orders to correct deficiencies may result in fines or refusal to allow license renewal. All seems fair to me.
Mhm.
It's a business you're running, and
Do they get some number of days?
that's what we were talking about. This is more general. The one at the bottom, that's what we're talking about.
Right.
We have to figure that out. We have to figure the right wording on that.
Yeah, and then the green and the yellow, if you can read that, please, too.
Owners can appeal a written violation within 21 days of notice in accordance with, okay, that's just a legal reference. And the one at the bottom, Mark, can you move it up to the green? Oh, we've already done that one. So.
Yeah. So I just wanted to point out the addition and the inspection.
I actually think we're farther along than it seems. So I don't think we're that far off.
Not too many bruises.
No, that's fine. So let's go to citizen speak time. And
Steve, just a clarification. After tonight, in terms of how many more days of
we have plenty of time.
Talk about scheduling. Okay.
We have plenty of time.
Okay.
Okay, let's start with Johanna W.
Hi. Thank you for letting me speak, and thanks for doing all of this.
Name and address, though, please.
My name is Johanna Wise, and my address is 14 Commonwealth Avenue.
Thank you.
Barrington. So I just want to say that I really am concerned about the 90-day limit. I don't really understand. It seems quite random and really not of service to anybody. So I just want to briefly share my story, which may influence the decision that you're making here. So I have been a Great Barrington resident since 2012. I bought my house with my ex-husband. We got divorced and I needed help paying my mortgage. I started by renting out rooms. I started renting out rooms short-term on Airbnb. During the pandemic, I no longer wanted to live in my house and rent out rooms. As you can understand, I didn't want to be sharing a home with strangers when there was a pandemic happening, so I moved out of my house. I also was losing work. I'm a massage therapist. I couldn't work during the pandemic, and I was able to rent out my house, the full house, and move into a smaller unit. I didn't need a 4-bedroom house to myself, so I moved a 1-bedroom that I was renting and rented out my whole house, which I own, on Airbnb. It has been a lifesaver, especially when I was not able to make as much with my work, which was unreliable. And I'm still nervous that I don't know what's going to happen, if we're going to have another wave and I can't work again. And it's very helpful for me personally to be able to have this additional income. And I don't really understand that limiting it to 90 days for me would be completely useless. What am I going to do the rest of the year? I'm going to have 9 months of the year. I can't rent my house out, but I can't live there because I'm already committed to another place that I'm living. I'm not going to find someone who's going to rent my house quote unquote, long term for the other 9 months of the year that I'm not renting it. What am I supposed to do with it? Then you have a housing problem. Then you have a house that's just sitting on the market that's, that's uninhabited. And that's of no use. When I'm renting it out, I'm bringing tourism into the area, and this is really helpful for the economy. Now, I'm not going to rent my house out on a long-term basis because you know what? I've put a lot of money into my house. It's a really nice house. It's renovated, and I don't feel safe renting it out to a long-term renter who's not going to necessarily care for it. So this isn't a house that's going to then become available to long-term renters and be able to help with this housing crisis that I understand is an issue and that we need to address. But my house is not here nor there in terms of that because it's not going to help. So if I'm not able to rent it out short term, I don't know what I'm going to do with it for those other 9 months. But this is really a problem for me to be able to only rent it out for a short amount of time like that. And I don't really understand the purpose of it and how it's helpful to anyone, but particularly for someone like me. And I know I'm not the only one who's in my circumstances. I know that there are many other people who are in similar circumstances to me and who don't even know that these laws are being proposed, and that this is going to possibly affect them. So I speak for myself and for others like me.
Thank you. You're at 3 minutes up. Thank you very much.
Comment, is that correct?
No, we don't comment on citizen speak. You can comment under select board time. James Manning. Go ahead, just unmute yourself, please. There you are.
I'm unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. First of all, again, I appreciate the board looking into this and trying to format some good rules here. But my understanding is that there is already rules in place for short-term leasing, if you want to call it that, and that's called home occupation, allowing 3 people in your house if you live there. Short-term rentals are commercial enterprises. If you recently watched the Holiday Inn disassemble and reassemble their hotel with a 3rd floor, that was so they could rent a 3rd more short-term rentals. Okay, that's a commercial enterprise. There's investors and there's users. Investors, if the market allows short-term renters, will always be a higher price, will always be able to pay a higher price than users. Short-term rentals are what I would call the lodgification of our neighborhoods. I don't want to live in a neighborhood that has a hotel spread out horizontally. And that's what these are. There's no other way to describe it. Well, there's a lot of ways to describe it. I'm sorry. But, just because technology companies have made it easy for you to become a hotel or a short-term renter or a tourist inn or whatever, doesn't mean it's a good idea. And we're showing that it's a bad idea by virtue of the fact that investors will just pay more for a house. So I'm really saying, I'm totally along with Lee on this. And I'm actually probably a little bit harsher. I would rather it be harsher than the rules here, because again, having somebody have a short-term rental property in the neighborhood that's residential is a commercial enterprise. That's kind of end of story. And what's going to happen is, like every other industry, they're going to be aggregators and consolidators, and then soon the majority of the property will be owned by large corporations, and they'll be renting it out, and there'll be subscription models, and they'll be able to then, invite everybody from all across the world to Great Barrington, although there won't be anybody to work in Great Barrington. The residents here deserve to have a residential neighborhood and no commercial enterprises next door. The lodgification, as I cited, is just not acceptable. And removing and replacing long-term rentals with short-term rentals leaves the town of Great Barrington starving for a workforce, which undoubtedly is now a critical part, as we've seen in the pandemic. So I would just appreciate if the rules get even stronger than this. I don't think it's fine to rent out rooms in your house, but it's not a good idea to buy a house and rent out that house on a short-term basis, which is a hotel. It's a commercial interest.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brian Frank.
Hi there, Brian Frank. I am a resident of Egremont, but I'm a professional property manager, and I sent a letter to the board. I want to provide you with a little bit of context.
So for tonight, this is for Great Barrington residents. I appreciate your honesty.
I also have several employees who all were unable to make it this evening, and several residents whose properties we manage. Let me add one thing here, because I think it'll be valuable. You can shake your head, Lee, but you should listen intently, because I actually have a lot more knowledge about this than you do. Aside from limitations.
So with that, I'm going to cut you off, because our meeting.
I'm just going to tell you.
I'm sorry. These are for Great Barrington residents. This is how we've set our rules up, and it's not me making the rules. This is the board. This is the way we've made our rules. Next is Madeline. Go ahead.
I'm Mandy Victor Pacharka. I've been a real estate agent for 46 years.
Your address, please.
9 Lakeview Road, Great Barrington.
Thank you.
I want to say something about the unavailability of property. I have seen through this pandemic an unbelievable market. I've never seen anything like it. And I don't really think there are people coming in, buying up blocks of property as rentals. Many people I watched moved here with families to get away from big cities. I do also feel strongly about the distinction between our second homeowners and our primary residents. I think that distinction the board needs to be cleared a little bit on that. And as well, I agree with Mrs. Weiss, who spoke earlier. The 90 days I have kind of been struggling with. I don't understand the limitation with just 90 days, because I know firsthand people come here and rent all year round. So I'd like to see that maybe broadened a little bit, unless there's an actual reason for the cap of 90 days.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
David Long. Just unmute yourself, David.
Yeah, there we go.
Right.
Hi, Dave Long, 304 North Plain Road. You guys clearly have been working on this. A lot of the language has gotten streamlined and cleaned up. However, the point that I made at an earlier meeting, I still think holds true, is that I would think we all agree that there is a serious problem here. And some of these stories, particularly about like on River Street, people being evicted to convert housing into short-term rentals is really shocking. But there's two things about this that I don't really hear in the conversation. One is that short-term rentals are not created equal, and that short-term rentals are an age-old part of the way we've managed our community since Europeans arrived here. I mean, it's a very key part in the flexibility to be able to create space for a need at any moment is an important thing. So to the extent that we're eliminating opportunities to legally create space of all types under any circumstance, we're actually reducing the capacity to sort of serve the needs of the people of the community. I think a much more targeted way of dealing with this is to really just take the money out of it. I mean, we've always had large numbers of short-term rentals, but we didn't have this kind of overheated market. And the fact that people are getting an extraordinary amount of dollars is the incentive for people to buy up and convert these properties. So if you were to sort of say, some reasonable, affordable level is not taxable, and then tax the hell out of everything above that, then you would give, a certain flexibility at one level of the community, but take the money out of what's really driving you guys crazy by your own words, which is the conversion of full-time properties into short-term rentals. I also think it's short-sighted to just cut off the line at 30 days or more, and it's not a short-term rental. I mean, right now we're looking at rents of $10,000 a month for what houses that I knew is full-time, regular, residential homes. The problem isn't limited to just those very short-term weekend kinds of rentals. We've got a deeper problem. If you were to extract some value from those problems and put those towards affordable housing and actually increase the housing stock, you would be much more effective than actually reducing the capacity we have to serve people's needs.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Michelle LeBear. I think you're unmuted, Michelle. Michelle, I'll go back to you. I assume you're having a connection problem. So I'll go back to you and I'll try again after a couple people. James.
Good evening, board. My name is James Garzone, 84 North Plain Road. I've been listening to several committees over the past few months, and I just want to make a couple of comments. One is on, I believe, the earlier 2 weeks ago, Mr. Pachano, he was frustrated, and he stated that he can't get people to agree to meet for the subcommittee, sub-housing committee. So it was interesting to hear earlier on this call that there wasn't an issue where he clearly stated there was. Another point is the planning board continues to try to make change to create the affordable housing. And they have in the past couple of years, as I've stated, we have plenty of affordable housing units that have been created and will be created in the next coming year. I believe that the 90-day restriction is too short, and I believe that making a distinction between owners is not appropriate. And my last comment, because I'll make this quick, I believe grammar does matter. And to make changes on the fly without assessing those changes is problematic. And I'll give you an example. Let's eat grandma or let's eat comma grandma. So grammar does matter and punctuation does. And I think we should review these changes without making these changes on the fly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me try Michelle again. Michelle, can you unmute yourself? Yeah, I see your hand up, but we're not hearing you, Michelle. Okay, let's move ahead. We'll go back to Michelle again. Robert.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Hey, Robert Sloanacre, 12 Gilmore Avenue. I'd like to start off by saying great debate. I agree with the 90-day. What is the purpose of that? We own an STR, and if we were limited to 90 days, we would have to really rethink how we use that property. It is a second home to us, but it is an adjacent property to the house we live in. So it is on a separate lot, but it is owned by us. A couple of things that came up in the discussion tonight on number 7 of general requirements for short-term rentals. I agree with the idea behind prohibiting dwelling units designated as affordable or otherwise income restricted. But are you not, let's say, because we have a view of the affordable housing apartments up behind the courthouse. And I just thought of a hypothetical scenario. A family that lives in one of those affordable houses decides to go on vacation. And the way they pay for their vacation is they put their apartment up on Airbnb. That would be limiting them from putting their apartment on Airbnb to help pay for their vacation because they are in an income bracket that makes them forced to live in affordable housing. So that's just FYI, a thought I had. And number 8, events that include amplified music or tents, which would customarily require a license or permit, are prohibited. So our lot that we have our STR on has a fairly large yard in it. If for some reason in the future our daughter decides to get married and wanted to have a party, we as the owners of that property would not be able to set up a tent and have a party, even though the house isn't short-term rented based on the way this is written. Am I reading that correctly? So
that's one we'll have to talk about.
Yeah. It just, the whole agenda of addressing ownership in this town and telling someone what they can and cannot do with their property within reason just seems to me a little crazy. Which one? Oh, the minimized public safety and health risks. Can we better define those? I mean, what is not safe or healthy about data? Oh, the data. Yeah, where's the data behind public safety and health. And in fact, where is the data behind the commercial interests that are purchasing these properties? If we're going to be asked to vote on this at some point, I think it'd be fair that the town produce the data backing up the claims that commercial interests are taking these over, and that Airbnb, or I should say short-term rentals, are not necessarily a hazard to public health.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dan Ruderman.
Hello, thank you. Dan Ruderman, 4 Nob Hill Road, Great Barrington. Just wanted to thank the select board again for all the hard work on it and the revisions that you've made. And I think it's worth pointing out that we all seem to sometimes mix up between I want to protect people to be able to make money with their homes, and I want to let them run a business, and is that a commercial enterprise or not? So if we can all agree that anybody that's making money on their home is running a commercial enterprise, they're running a business, they're making money, then I think that that's what we're trying to do, is say, let's let citizens be able to make money. Let's let residents that live here and own homes here make money. And I thought that Lee did an interesting balancing act of trying to balance out the comments before. I didn't mean to mention her by name, of balancing out I want to preserve the rights of people who own homes to be able to do what they want with them. And I want to stop people from coming in and just buying houses to run hotels in houses. So I think that balance made sense. If there's a better way to do it, I'm not sure what it is, but I think if we keep these discussions going and continue to listen to our citizens and residents speak, we can get there. So that, again, the idea is, I live here, I own a home here, I can do whatever I want with my home. That's something that's not currently permitted, right? I can't really run a hotel in my home. I can't really run it. We're just not enforcing it. But it's kind of like it was a nod to say, okay, if you live here and you have a second home, then that's okay. I don't really see it as being discriminatory towards folks that don't live here and have a home or two here from treating them both like commercial interests. I think the idea is that as a community, we want to keep homes as homes. We want to do everything we can to encourage the homes to be used by people that live here all the time and work here, without being discriminatory towards anybody else. So thank you for your continued efforts. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Frederica Siegel.
Thanks so much for the opportunity to speak. I really admire the amount of time that you're putting into this.
Name and address, please.
27 Round Hill Road. Yes.
Thank you.
There are a few words that float in and out of the bylaw, the proposed bylaw, that I want to bring to your attention. The word owner, I think that's very clear. The word operator, I thought that you were going to speak to that subject tonight and talk about the difference between an owner and operator and the connotation of that. There's the word resident that I don't feel has any legal standing. In the dictionary, it says a person who lives somewhere permanently or on a long-term basis. And I don't think that reflects the nuances that you want to reflect in your bylaw. Finally, there's primary resident and second homeowner. Those words are very clear. I really think that you should scrub your document for any references to resident. I feel you should eliminate it because it's just too vague. If you want to distinguish between second homeowners and primary residents, you should use those words. And if you actually want to vote to not distinguish between second homeowners and primary residents, then you should use the word owner. So asking you to take a look at that and consider that suggestion.
Thank you very much. Chris Tucci.
Hi there, my name is Chris Tucci. I live at 366 Park Street in Housatonic. I am thankful for the time that you've been spending on this and for the detail with which you're going over the information. I think it's important to bring into the discussion that Airbnb listings and short-term rentals in general lead to higher house prices and rental rates, that the effect is higher for house prices than it is for rental rates generally, but the effect of higher prices decreases when owner occupancy is a portion of a bylaw. So I think it's important that that distinction is made, because the effect on housing prices, rental rates is directly correlated with ownership and residence on the property and in the unit. So I think that is an important distinction to make, and I'm thankful that we're doing so. And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chris. Let me try Michelle again. Michelle, try to unmute yourself. Okay, we'll come back to you, Michelle. I'm not sure what the problem is. Natalia Price.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Natalia Price, Mountain Valley Road.
In what town?
Great Barrington. Yeah, 9B Mountain Valley. So I just have a few, I guess, points. One of the things that honestly, like, I think the biggest thing that bothers me in all of this, that the purpose and intent points clearly do not reference anything about creating more available housing. So my question is, why all of this is constantly being discussed with the main goal as creating more available housing? If that is the goal, that is the purpose and intent. Why is it not one of the points? More importantly, I guess, none of this will create affordable, not even, forget about affordable, available housing. Because if anybody paid any attention or read any news, there is a housing shortage in the entire country. In US, Great Barrington is not a unique location, it simply is everywhere. So there is a pent-up demand on second homes, on vacation homes. So if any of these Airbnbs, and actually even the first lady when she spoke, and I'm sorry, I didn't write down her name, the lady who's divorced and is renting her house, even she said that she would not be selling her house or renting long-term. But let's say she does. One thing, I guess, if anybody cares to look at Airbnb or any short-term rentals, they tend to be improved and nice, and therefore they will be selling, if they go on the market, for a high price. So that being said, if we're talking about that the locals are trying to get housing that is affordable, those are not those homes. So they're just going to be bought out by people buying second homes. In any case, next thing is the 90 days. I've been following, I listened to every single meeting. I don't understand how 90 days, was brought up. What was the reasoning? It was never explained. And instead, just on Facebook, there is, little questionnaires, which is honestly, it's kind of a nonsense. So I would like in the future meetings, go back to the fact that just like many others, and get back to figure out why 90 days, who came up with 90 days, and what is the reasoning behind it. And finally, the third point I want to bring up, LLCs. LLC does not mean that somebody is a corporation. Corporations are different from LLCs. A lot of families own their homes in LLC for estate planning purposes. Us is the same thing. Our home in Great Barrington is an LLC because we're a blended family. Blended family, we simply cannot, we have 5 children. So therefore, for purposes of us owning a home, it has to be in some entity. It cannot be simply, 2 people owning the house. So this is kind of my biggest point. And more importantly, I want to echo a lot of other people saying there is absolutely no data has been presented, and data that has been presented, or one that I can find, does not support any of the claims that we actually have an issue with any investors having 200 short-term rentals in the town of almost 3,500 housing units, and out of them 56 only owned by LLCs or corporations. And I just go back to the LLCs. It literally represents a little bit over 1.5%. It's not.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Your time is up. I appreciate your comments. Francois?
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, hi. Francois Coeto. I'm at 671 South Egremont Road in Greater Barrington.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. So first of all, I am quite shocked that the Select Board has been working on a document that has been redlined, and all of a sudden somebody brings a new version out of the blue. I find this pretty dishonest. Things have been discussed. You guys have been looking at all the articles of the previous bylaws proposal, and all of a sudden somebody on the board comes up with a new version. Find it pretty shocking. I understand that Lee Davis wanted to clear some misconception initially. That's on social media, but all she talks about is housing shortage. And I would echo the comment that many people have said. None of this bylaw is going to change anything about what people do with their houses. Either people are going to keep it empty when they are not there, or they are going to sell their houses and somebody's going to buy it cash and not rent it. So it's not going to change anything about the housing crisis in Great Barrington. All of this proposal is, in my mind, there's no facts. It's all based on the opinions of one mainly member of this board. Maybe she doesn't want to have any of those Airbnbs near her, but
let's not get into personality and why someone wants something.
You have to, because there's
we don't have to.
One person is running the show here.
I think the other three board members would disagree with you.
The process is pretty shocking, if you ask me. And I'll finish by saying that creating two classes of citizens between the ones that are full-year residents and the one that might be second homeowners creates a pretty adversarial situation where, you know, you're basically pointing fingers at one category of people that for very good reasons might need to rent their houses. In our case, we discovered the Berkshires 15 years ago. We might want to retire there. We might rethink that now. But we were able to do certain renovations within our houses that we had been pushing for the past few years. So, you know, I think you need to really think twice what you are trying to accomplish there, because I don't think the housing crisis is going to be solved with any of what you are putting there or in the proposal.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Erica Milkey?
Hi, everyone. Erica Milkey, now a condo owner at 360 Park Street in Housatonic.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And that's actually really relevant to like how much vested interest I'm feeling in this. I have been a renter for decades. I was born in Great Barrington. My dad was born in Great Barrington. My son was born in Great Barrington. It is amazing to me how impossible it is to find housing. And I am one of the lucky few who is able to work earning a real living wage. I work doing accounting for 2 nonprofits in town. A constant topic of conversation is the challenges of maintaining a workforce, given that nobody can afford to live here. I have so many things I want to say. I really appreciate Lee's efforts on this. And, you know, kind of speaking to what Francois had just said, there is a feeling that it's Lee versus everyone else. And it's mind-boggling. Sorry, Garfield, I see your head shaking. I have appreciated your input to support Lee in these efforts. It's one of the pieces that I feel like is really missing, Ed, particularly as you are sometimes bringing up semantic issues or other critiques, is that, like, I would love to hear, what do you propose instead? Because something definitely needs to happen. We need change to happen. And sure, there might be a handful of people that are like the retirees that, you know, are struggling to be able to take a vacation, so they want to rent out their house. But we talk about second homeowners. I've done bookkeeping for people for a long time. We're talking about third homeowners, fourth homeowners, fifth homeowners. I mean, very few of the people that are taking the houses off the market, in my experience, are people who, you know, are struggling to just maintain a quality of life by renting out their house for a few months out of the year. I also, there was a very clear meeting where Lee explained where the 90 days came from. And I felt like that was very clear. I mean, there's no solution that's going to make everyone happy, but certainly something needs to change. So I'm really hopeful that as we're all coming up with critiques and issues, we've got to start somewhere. It's not going to solve everything, but we do have to come up with some sort of a solution. I couldn't find anywhere to rent that made any sense as a single working mom, you know, who's born in Great Barrington. It's just, I don't have a trust fund to support paying $5,000 a month for rental. And I'm really happy with the condo that I purchased, but it's definitely like one of the only feasible places to purchase, given that places are going off the market like hotcakes.
Thank you, Erica.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Michael Peretti?
Yes, hello, board. Mike Peretti. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, 125 Seacon Crossroad. Thank you for letting me speak. You know, it's really interesting. The more I listen to this, you know, the more frustrated I get. I think you're kind of lumping us all into one category. Simple history for me is I've owned my rental next door to where I live, where I used to live, for 30 years. And, you know I've had long-term rentals, tenants for many, many years. One became a police officer in Great Barrington. I currently have a woman who's in her 60s right now who does housekeeping and works in a general store. And, you know, I've got a long history. And I've had bad tenants too, who've left my place messed up, had the power cut off because they didn't pay the bill. So, you know, I've done the full cycle of this, and I've been in this for a really long time. And I do have an Airbnb. One of my units is that. And that has made a significant difference in my income. And it allows me to actually give it a very discounted rent to my current tenant. She pays considerably below market rate. So I walk in, you know, a balancing act here. And so I'm trying to do the best I can for providing affordable housing. But at the same time, you know, the Airbnb really makes a huge difference to me. And if you restrict me to 90 days, I have to find a way to make extra money. And my current tenant is going to have to pay more rent. And she may not be able to go up to, you know, market rate. And that's where I'm talking like $500 extra a month for her. And there's no way she's going to do that. So, you know, don't lump us all together in one giant, you know, formula here. It should be case by case, you know. And so it's just really frustrating for me to see this. You know, I'm not a prospective buyer, and I do know this that's happening. There's people coming in here and sucking up houses and doing short term. It happens every single week, and I'm seeing it. So, you know, I think you need to go case by case, but a 90-day, you know, limitation is going to sink me, and it's going to be a disastrous for me. So, you know, I appreciate you. You know, let me you know, vent here, but you know, it should be case by case. And you know, I'm trying to hang on to my properties, and I live right next door, built a house, you know, and I've got the things going on here. And you know, eventually, I like to turn it over to both my kids. They'll each have a piece of property. Then I can, you know, pack up and move away. But you know, it surely should be case by case, guys. And, so don't lump us all in together. And you're going to hurt a lot of people that are really scratching out a living here. And, so, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Sharon Gregory?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sharon Gregory, 32 Hollenbeck Avenue, Great Barrington. I read about 7 newspapers most days, and a lot of them cover what's happening. So when people say there's no data, there's a lot of data. Maybe people don't read a lot of it, but I am concerned mostly about maintaining our communities. I think it's a wonderful thing that we have, and protecting us against the money-making machines that are out there. I mean, it's in the newspapers every day that investors want bigger returns, and real estate is the place to do it. So what I wanted to say is that I had a hard time kind of wrapping my head around the 90 days, and I hear what people are saying. But I ran some numbers, and I sent it to the select board, but maybe not in time to really discuss or anything. But I ran 5 scenarios. 2 of them were renting rooms out and using reasonable assumptions. People can make $6,500, $15,000 in these 2 cases that I ran. The third one is renting a house for 2 months in 2-month blocks, and people who wanted to do that escaped the short-term rental scenario. And I know a lot of people that rent the house, so I do have a lot of data besides the ones that you get from the newspapers. But renting it out for 2-month groups of time, there's a smaller house is $36,000 a year. A larger house is $60,000 a year. And I know people who rent 2 months who make actually $60,000 a year. So you can escape the short-term rental definition by just having a longer period. So it doesn't have to stay empty. 2 last scenarios I had were, renting it out under the STR bylaw. And one had renting it out, house out for 5-day periods, and you can do it for 18 periods, a total nights of 90 days a year. And one scenario was $31,500. The other scenario is about the same revenue. You're renting a house on weekends only, 45 out of 52 weeks, and you make $31,500. So, we don't escape investors who want to do this because they can rent, 45-day blocks and so forth. We're only talking about those under 30 days. And I am concerned that's churning a house like a hotel, and that does degrade our communities. So I ask everybody to just, look at the scenarios you might have. As I say, I know a lot of people that rent out, and you don't rent out every single day. You rent out on
Sharon,
weekends.
can you just wrap up at your 3 minutes are up?
Oh, thank you, Steve. Yes. So just run your numbers, and I do think we should have an exemption like Mr. Parati says. Thank you.
Thank you. Next one says Zoom user. I need your name and address, please.
Hi, it's Amanda Hanlon Hoffler, 193 Maple Avenue.
Go
Great
ahead. I'm
Barrington.
sorry. I promoted the wrong person, but I'll get to that person next. I apologize.
Okay, that's
Go
okay.
ahead.
All right, so one of the things that I wanted to point out was that I disagree entirely with the 90-day limit. I think that one of the things we have to think about with Airbnb is that it's made travel affordable for families. And it's one of the reasons why it's so popular. And, I have a little in-lot apartment that I have rented out to Airbnb in the past. I rent typically $90 to $100 a night. And my most popular guest is our local or camp counselors. They get 24 hours off from camp. They don't want to spend it with the kids. They rent out my Airbnb for one night. They go back to camp. It gives them some freedom and keeps them coming back to work at the camps summer after summer. And so I have a problem with making vacationing less affordable for families. And I also think that there's a need for local musicians, which are sometimes people that will rent out my Airbnb. The other thing that I have problem with is the 10-person limit. If at some point in the future, Mark and I decide that we want to go live in our in-law apartment, our house has 7 bedrooms and 10 bathrooms. Why should the house be limited to only 10 people when a larger group of people could rent the house? I think that there are only 56 non-conforming properties, which represent less than 1% of the entire housing stock in Great Barrington, and that we're afraid that corporations are going to come up and buy all these houses, but we're talking about how there's a housing shortage. What houses are these people going to buy? There are not properties available. And I know for a fact that sitting down the street on Silver Street is a house that's been on the market for 3 years. So it's not like every property in the Berkshires is being snapped up in seconds. And I really disagree with this one size fits all property. I also disagree that it's not allowed in town currently, as I hold a statewide registration certificate and pay taxes on it already. And I think that a lot of us would probably take some legal action against the town saying that it's not presently allowed. And that's all I really have to say. But I really agree for a case-by-case basis. I think 10 people limit is not okay. I think 90 days is not okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Okay, person who's under Zoom user.
Yeah, hi, this is Seth Levy. I live at number 6 Kirk Street in Housatonic.
Thank you.
And yeah, I have a couple issues here. First, I think that we really shouldn't be hearing from anybody who's has comments regarding the broad housing issue in Great Barrington. Unless it's listed in your intents and purposes, it really doesn't have a place here. And I think a lot of the conversation.
Let me just interrupt for a second. I usually don't. This is citizen speak time. They can bring up any issue they want that pertains to the town. So this was not just for short-term rental. I understand your point, though.
Yeah. Okay. Also, shouldn't this whole conversation be taking place in front of the zoning board? You're drawing distinctions between long-term and short-term rentals. And if you're gonna make that distinction, won't that have to be changed in the zoning law? And also, when you have to create a definition for commercial use, you know, if I fix lawnmowers in my garage, or if I cut hair in a back room of my house, are you able to limit the hours that I'm working out of my garage or out of a spare room in my house? So I think those are zoning issues. And the other point I was going to make was one that was just made, and that the state legitimizes our STRs as legal, you know, because they tax us. They tax us on every night that people are in our homes. You know, that's a larger legal issue, and I have a house that I've lived in for 17 years in Housatonic. I renovated it and raised my family there. I now use that home to pay their college tuition. I don't understand where anybody gets off deciding, you know, how much I should be able to make from that house. How many nights I should be able to rent it. The 90 nights is arbitrary, and it's, you know, you guys just created it. Leah just created this 90 nights. First, I don't think it'll stand up legally. And I think it's offensive just for, you know, that we just heard from another person 2 callers ago who was saying, well, we should be able to make 30,000 or we should be able to make 40,000. I mean, who are you to decide how much I can make? If I have a plumbing business and I have, you know, part of my house full of plumbing supplies, and I make $120,000 with my plumbing business. Are you going to tell me that I have too many supplies in my garage? And this is really not within your right, and I think that you owe the population, you owe your constituents more respect than you're giving them here. Also, this is
your time's almost up, so if you could just wrap up, please.
If you cut my rental down in 90 days, we'll end up using it as our home again. But I know a lot of people who own STRs, and if they're not going to live in it, they're going to sell it. They're not going to rent it long term. I mean, if they can make 3 times or so what they can make short term, they're not going to do it long term. And the laws are so skewed against long term landlords. I mean, that's a big part of the problem that we're seeing in housing around the country.
Wrap up? Your time is over.
Yeah, the laws are just skewed against landlords. So those issues, but mostly the zoning issue, I think that this
thank you very much. I appreciate
the zoning board. Thank you.
Mary Eastland.
Hi, my name is Mary Eastland, and I live on 8 Squaw Peak Road. And I just have a couple things to say about this. First of all, if you work at Dunkin' Donuts, there's no way that you're going to be able to afford a house in Great Barrington, even to rent in Great Barrington. So couching this under affordable housing is such a waste of time. The other thing I think is you should take this whole document and throw it out. Just throw it in the garbage and start talking about Housatonic's water. Their water's brown. I mean, this is just such a waste of time that you guys are spending all this time and all this language to keep, the elite neighborhoods elite. Squaw Peak is a beautiful road. I don't care what my neighbors do with their house. It's their house. They have worked and paid their own mortgage. Keep your hands and your laws off our houses. It's so nervy to be doing what you're doing. I just really can't get over it. And I hope everyone comes to the town meeting and votes against this. But I really think you're wasting so much time on it when you really should be working on something. I mean, have you looked at Housatonic's water? It's brown. It doesn't affect my water because I have a well. But I just can't believe you're wasting all this time and couching it as affordable housing. It's such a fib. Not you, Ed. I think you're doing a great job. Just give you a thumbs up. But anyway, now hush.
Thank you very much. Frat and David? No. Somehow Johanna W. has already spoken.
Yes, he has.
So we'll go to Frat David.
On mute. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. I live in 10 Nob Hill Road in Great Barrington. I lived here for almost 30 years. Previously more towards Housatonic, and I have experienced both, being able to afford limited income and living in the house, becoming a landlord for long-term rental, having the house being trashed, and then because of that, trying to do Airbnb. I have a lot of sympathy and appreciation for the intention of this bylaw, because I do hear that there's a lot of people that grew up here and cannot find a place to live. I think that I've seen only a few revision of this attempt, in bylaws, so there might be some revision that I'm not privy to. But some of the stated desires that were stated in this discussion are not in the goals. And so I don't understand whether the goal is to make sure that there are more houses to buy, or the goal that makes sure that there's more rentals. Is the goal more affordable rental? Like, what is the goal here? There's a shortage of housing, but housing for what? And I think if that would be clarified, that would be easier to kind of think about how do we translate those goals to certain bylaws. If the way it's stated is that we don't want people to buy to buy houses for commercial use. So is this for? I know there was an earlier version of it that spoke about new purchases. There's no mention of that at all in this revision. And also, I think that it's important to kind of have data, like how many of those purchases have been happening, and to what extent there is a lacking of homes to own, to what extent there's a lacking of home to rent, and to what extent the short-term rental who's been in Great Barrington as part of our economy for a long time, to what extent that's going to affect the town in terms of the business in the town, in terms of making revenue from tourism, and it makes some revenue from taxes, because that's not the people who do short-term rental. They not only benefit themselves, they benefit in businesses and the town through taxes. So I think that there's a disconnect between the stated goals and what follows after. So the stated goals needs to be clearer. I also think that
your time is up, so thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. Okay. I'm going to allow Johanna W. I'm going to unmute to see if it's the same person, but you can't speak twice, so. Just unmute yourself, Johanna W.
Oh, are you saying that I can speak twice?
No, you cannot speak twice.
No, it is the same person.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Ben Elliott.
Hi, Ben Elliott, 208 Pleasant Street, Houstonic. I just wanted to check, are we allowed to talk about things other than short-term rentals?
God, I would love you to talk about something other than short-term rentals.
I thought that might be the case. I just wanted to check. I wanted to say thank you to the town and to the crew that put the tarp up on the roof at the school last week. It looks great. But I wanted to ask, I know there had been discussion about potentially doing some other work on kind of the immediate, dangers at the building, like boarding the windows. And I know there were budget issues with that. Are there any plans to do anything else in the immediate future?
So far, this is all that's been budgeted, but that doesn't mean we won't do it. But no is the answer.
Yeah, I thought that might be the case. I just wanted to point out something that's been happening recently where the brick in the chimney on the building seems to be deteriorating at kind of an accelerating pace. Last fall, there was one brick missing from the top of the chimney. As of last week, there were at least 4, 2 on the roof and 2 had fallen off the building and onto the ground. And it's on an area where people park and where kids walk to the park. So I just wanted to mention it as a kind of an issue that seems to be getting worse as winter goes on. And
I appreciate that. I know Mark's already written it down, and we'll have Sean look at it.
All right, great. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Okay, Michelle, you're the last one. We're going to give you one more chance. Hopefully you got your connection here. Michelle Lubert.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I had to reboot the whole system, Steve. Thank you for your patience. Michelle Lubert, 70 Division Street, and I'm sorry, we're going back to short-term rentals. Many of you and the people out there have read my letter.
Yes.
Concerning my property at 70 Division Street, which is the family homestead. When you talk about legacy in a community, both my mother's family and my father's family immigrated from Europe. Ironically, my Sicilian grandfather lost his property in Sicily because the government took it over for the greater good. And he came to the United States where he would have more freedom. I've been pointed out that maybe I don't support affordable housing, but I'll have you know that I have a sister who's in senior housing, affordable housing. I have a brother who's a veteran who just lost his leg, who's waiting for veterans housing. And I had my late sister died while waiting on a housing list. So yeah, I do know about it. But my family's hardly a money-making machine. It's not. And my father worked really hard in this community, and I know, and Garfield and Lee, you've been at the house. It's a very modest house, very modest house. And in Great Barrington, my dad dropped out of school when he was 14 to be a bricklayer. And there isn't a place in Great Barrington that doesn't have brick or mortar that my father hasn't worked on. But now the house he built, left to his daughter with my mom, after educating all his kids in this community, I'm being told what I can and can't do with it. And I have to be honest with you, I do feel punished, Lee. I do feel punished. And I would only suggest that you put another definition in the short-term rental bylaw, and that's collateral damage, because there are people in this community who will be collateral damage. 90 days is far too short a time. I mean, like I said, I haven't born and raised here. I haven't traveled a lot. My husband is from Michigan. He's put up with me and whatever, my family for years and years. He talks about retiring to Michigan. Now I'm being told, well, to do so, you're going to have to sell the house. But I really have to wonder what's next. Is the town of Great Barrington going to tell me how much I can sell my house for to help solve the housing crisis? So right now, the short-term bylaw, every iteration, I hope there will be some sort of epiphany here. I haven't seen it yet. I just get angrier and angrier. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. So there's one more person with their hand up. I'm going to ask them to speak very quickly because we've gone a long time. And it's Catherine. Just give your name and address, please.
Hi, this is Catherine, 86 North Plain Road in Great Barrington.
Can I have your last name, please?
Hood. Catherine Hood.
Okay, this is the last speaker, so.
Yep, so I'll go quick. So
Yep.
I worry that the board is opening themselves up to legal litigation because to a certain extent, this is un-American. To dictate what you can or can't do with the property that somebody has purchased is borderline unconstitutional. I agree that there is a huge affordable issue for properties. It's all over the nation. My brother can't afford to buy a house, and I sympathize with him. But saying to people that have already purchased a house what they can or can't do with it is fundamentally a problem. At the bare minimum, anybody that has already purchased, there should be some kind of grandfather clause. I don't think what's being proposed is right, but bare minimum, we should make sure that does not impact anybody that already owns. You owe it to the people that have already purchased to at least do that much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now board, and I'm going to ask the board just to indulge me, and we can all speak, but just fairly quickly because I have a commitment that I have to get to. So Garfield, go right ahead.
Well, I'd like to think that we can speak to more of this at another time, but one of the things I want to cover, there's many things I'd like to address. One of them is, and I don't mean any disrespect or not being empathetic to Joanna, but she moved out of her home because she was afraid of the pandemic. We're all afraid of the pandemic. We all don't have that ability to move out of our house. So I'm sorry, I can't have a lot of empathy for you because you could stay in your house like a bunch of other people that have not have the choice but to stay in their home. So I'm sorry, I don't have a lot of empathy for you and that sympathy for you in that regard. Also, I know many people actually living in the Travel Lodge, Winds in the Pines, and other hotels and motels we have in this town because they can't find a place to live. So that's pretty obvious. I don't think short-term rentals are making family vacations any less expensive. I don't know any families that could do a short-term rental there and think it's going to make it less expensive for them because they can't afford to do a short-term rental. They're not inexpensive. And I'll just say this last, and there's other things, but I'll let someone else speak. I think 90 days is 3 months. If you've heard all the monies one can make a night at $300, I think was a fair price that we were speaking about. Wasn't it like $30,000 or something you're going to make in that short of time? Is that not enough? I don't get it. I have a problem with that. We're speaking money, money, money. No one said, geez, I love the town. Let's do this for I can help do this. Everyone's concerned about whether or not they can make oodles and oodles of money. It's just not how it works. It's just not how it should be, okay? For me, I find it very offensive. I have more, but I was speaking. We have other times to talk, so I will speak more then.
Thank you, Garfield. Eric.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I was just going to say, as far as the subcommittee on affordable housing, if I know they've been having trouble meeting. I know people's schedules change and life's busy for everybody, but I'd be happy to take a seat on the board if there was one available. Just to put that out there to keep meetings going. So other than that, that's all I have to say tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Ed?
Sorry about the muting. Very quickly, I just want to correct, Dave Long was talking about the River Street apartment, kicking out tenants to turn it into short-term rental. That was the one written up in the Berkshire Eagle. It is not short-term. It's somebody who lives there full-time, who combined apartments, who lives there full-time. Very quickly to answer Erica, you must have come late because I had already presented 6 or 7 things, 3 or 4 that the town has already done to increase affordable housing, and 6 or 7 more that they ought to do. And then there's finally on that, if we want to stop confusing people about, the purpose of this, we should stop talking about creating housing. This board and the planning board working together in the very beginning decided this will not create housing. That's not one of the purposes of this. We should stop talking about creating housing with this, and then we won't be confusing people. That's all. Thanks.
Lee.
Yes, thank you. A couple things just to remind everyone that this does not impact seasonal housing or month-to-month housing. So if someone wants to rent in blocks of time to a travel nurse, to a professor, to an adjunct teacher, to a student, that is available to them. We're just talking about small increments of time. And any property that is being used as short-term rental is not workforce housing. So it does have an impact on housing. So I dispute that, Ed, because if it's being used as a commercial enterprise, if it's being used as a hotel or a motel or a B&B, of which we have plenty available in Great Barrington, it is not being used for a residence. It's not being used for housing. So the proliferation of short-term rentals do have a negative impact on the availability of housing in Great Barrington. I also would like to point out that the average amount of money that people make as a short-term rental operator in Great Barrington is $350 a night. That's the average. Many people are making much more. So if you look at that per year, that's over $120,000 a year. If you look at that 80% occupancy, that's still over $100,000. So with Garfield's mention of money, we have to ask ourselves, do we want to be a community or do we want to be a destination? And this is all about what we want to be. And there are people struggling just to make it here and to have one home. And I appreciate the contribution that second homeowners have on this community. I work for a nonprofit and there's very, very generous people that come here seasonally and contribute. But I'm just appealing to those people that we do have a housing shortage, and any property that's being used as a commercial enterprise in a residential area could be workforce housing. It could be families that want to move here, that want to invest here. There's a small house just around the corner from me that was very, very affordably priced. And it would have been a wonderful starter home for a family. And instead, it got snapped up by cash. And guess what? What's the person doing? They're short-term rentaling it. So the limit of days is not something that I pulled out of the air. As Erica Melke commented, this was another item that I had brought up in an earlier meeting. And I'll just briefly mention it again. The San Francisco Office of Economic Development published a report. And in this, they determined that a municipality should analyze the number of days that a host would need to engage in short-term renting to equal the average income they could receive from residential renting. So they used this break-even analysis. And they said to use this when setting the annual limits on the number of days for short-term renting. So we're trying to create an incentive so people aren't, such as investors, looking at this just as a cash cow, as a gravy train, and recognize that they are investing. And when they do have investments, they are taking away housing that could be for a family. And now not all locals can afford expensive properties, but there are families that can. They are still looking for housing. So I do just want to mention that that is an item. And again, I just want to stress when we're talking about this, do we want to be a destination or a community? And we can be both, but we just need to recognize that there's a stress that happens, and that when we do have properties that are taken off the housing market for residential use and become a commercial enterprise, that puts a stress on the housing. So I absolutely think that this does have a direct impact on the availability of housing. So thank you very much for everyone's time. This is a community effort. It's not me against the world. I know sometimes it looks like I'm doing a lot of talking, too much talking for my liking, but I do appreciate all the discourse and the discussion. So thank you for everyone that is reaching out.
Thank you, Lee.
Let's have 5 seconds.
5 seconds, Garfield.
All right, maybe 10. There are a lot of things that people are concerned about being micromanaged. I just want to mention, you own a car, it's your car, you still have to wear a seatbelt because that's the law. And if you don't, then you get arrested. You can't have a zillion people in your house in certain spots because those are going to be fire laws. So there are things that are restrict everyone. If you have land, but it's your land, you own it. But if you're not in the right zone, you can't have chickens or cows, and that's restricting you as well. That's telling that there are laws put in place for everything, for even us to protect against ourselves. But there are limitations to everything. So we're not micromanaging how you can make money. We don't mind you making money. You're just trying to keep it so maybe everyone can live here. But there are things that are against that manage how we live.
So I'll just finish up on a completely different topic. The housing subcommittee that Eric referenced between the planning board and the select board. Pedro's been in touch with me, so isn't Brandy. I will reach out to them probably Wednesday, and we'll figure out a way to get the committee back moving again, because we do need that committee. Any media time? Seeing none, we had 57 people at the Height tonight, and that was 50 attendees and 7 panelists at that time. Thank you very much. Everyone have a good evening.
Thank you.
Have a good night.